College football nerds, we're here talking Miami and Clemson. It's a big game in the ACC, and we want to discuss it. Remind y'all right now, please hit that like, please hit that subscribe. Helps us out a ton. But also give us your predictions in the comments, and we will mix it up with you and tell you where you're wrong. All right, Josh, we were comparing notes before the game, before this discussion, having watched both these teams this year. And look, Clemson has been who they are for a while now, and they're quietly just handling their business. And like Alabama this year, they're one of the teams that doesn't seem super affected by COVID, which also says a lot about their coaching staff and their ability to prepare. The surprise for us, though, is Miami. And it's been a pleasant surprise. We don't know entirely what to do with them, but one thing that you've said for a couple years now, and I've agreed, Miami plays great defense. They've got some dudes on offense, but they're so held back by the quarterback position that not only can they not take advantage of that, they also end up losing to teams that they shouldn't be. So talk about that a little bit in perspective, or give the listeners who aren't Miami fans some perspective on how different it is this year for Miami.
In recent years, we've been critical of Miami mainly just because there's a cap that the quarterback position puts on every team. If you look at Florida State the past, 4 years now? I mean, the quarterback position has prevented them from being a good team at any point. Miami has found a good quarterback. It changes the complexion of the team. It changes what you can do. It changes the way teams defend you. There have been points in the past few games where other teams were greatly strained because of D'Eriq King's ability to run and throw. And we made a point with the Florida State game. Florida State is not a good team. But Florida State played a terrible game against Miami. It's easy to look at that game and just throw it away and say, well, that's because Florida State's not that bad. You have to realize at least some of it was due to the strain that Miami put on Florida State. For example, there was a touchdown play where they threw to a wide open guy going over the middle of the field. And you say, oh, that was a bust. It's easy. Anybody could make that throw. What people miss is, they're getting in the red zone. And D'Eriq King is a great runner. So they use a zone read concept and start swinging D'Eriq King around with the ball. The linebacker in that play gets worried because of what King is, and he kind of holds and lets the receiver run past him. That's what creates the bust. If he's not concerned about King in the run game, that doesn't happen. There's another play where they just ran up the gut for a touchdown for like 20, 25 yards. Same basic deal. It was a zone read. He gives the dive inside zone. So, he gives the dive. That means King goes outside. And the linebacker for Florida State chases King all the way to the hash. Even though King doesn't have the ball, he's that concerned about King keeping it. And because of that, he's cleared, and that let the running back get up. In particular, that meant that the offensive line was able to get on a middle linebacker. There was no safety in the play. The other linebackers cleared. Bang, you get a touchdown. So all this stuff, be it pass, run, again, and then there's the threat of the pass, which means they're not loading up on the run, and these linebackers aren't right at the line of scrimmage on these plays. It all leads to a much more effective football team if you're Miami. Last year, your quarterback rating on average, if you're Miami, was 136. The last 3 games of the season, Florida International, Duke, Louisiana Tech, obviously not happy games, but you had a 70, an 85, and 112 quarterback rating. D'Eriq King's averaging 150. And in the UAB game was his lowest mark so far. It was a COVID game. Everything was weird. I don't think he was quite in sync with anybody. And he had 128 QB rating. Even in the Florida State game, he had 6.6 yards per attempt, but he had 3 touchdowns passing, 144 QB rating. And as I said, his threat to run and to be able to make plays really opened up everything they were doing. So I think Miami is just tremendously better in all areas because of King. And whatever you want to say about how good King is or is not, like as a runner or a passer, you have to understand his mere presence and ability to make these plays is making everything else Miami does tremendously more effective.
So Clemson fans have long criticized us on this show for something that we do that to me is about to be a compliment to Miami, and Miami fans might take it the wrong way, just like Clemson fans have in the past. But a lot of times we've talked about how Clemson will blow out a team and we'll still find things that we didn't love about that game or that performance because we judge them to a different standard. So you might blow somebody out, but it's Wake Forest and they're objectively bad. You might blow somebody out and it's the Citadel or Georgia Tech and you throw a couple of picks. That's a concern for us. So we've said that about Clemson in the past. Is it fair to say that about Miami this year, in that on one hand, you're handling your business? And that's what we want to see, because in the past, Miami has been so ill-equipped to handle their business, because when you don't have a quarterback, you can't even beat the teams you're supposed to beat. So on one hand, that's a good. But on the other hand, there's still a lot we don't know because your opponents have been so bad. Is that a concern here for Miami as well?
I personally think what you've seen from Miami has been mostly positive there. And we talk about this. You say it's a ding and it's not a ding. If you're struggling with bad teams, it's a bad sign. If you're blowing out bad teams, it's a good sign. And there's only so much you can take away from 52-10 over Florida State, given how bad Florida State is. And yes, they are that bad, struggling for most of the game with Jacksonville State. But you did beat them 52-10. It wasn't close. And that's where we talk about a lot with Clemson at the end of the year. Clemson is a really good team, despite whether or not they play other good teams. I mean, if you're a good team and you blow out bad teams, you're probably still a good team. And if you're dominating teams, even bad ones, it still probably means you're elite, because only really high-level teams can consistently dominate lesser teams. The one thing I'll say, the closest game they've had was the Louisville game. They win by 13. I don't think Louisville's a great team, but they're not terrible. And they still put up 47 points in that game. And honestly, I'd be more concerned if it was lower scoring. But the fact that it was a high scoring game, again, Miami has struggled to score high points against anybody for years. And that tells me that they're consistent enough to take opportunities in front of them. So I am concerned about Miami with their schedule, but I'm also happy they're blowing it out. And I'll sort of turn that around. I mean, do you not think the same thing's true of Clemson? Again, the competition hasn't been great, but I haven't really seen any. There's obviously no signs of concern. I mean, they're still dominating the teams in front of them, right?
Look, I can't say enough good things about Clemson right now. We catch a lot of flack from them because of what you just said. Like, you want to be excited because you blew out Wake Forest, but you should blow out Wake Forest, and that's good that you did. But Wake Forest can suck, and you still be an elite team. The two don't have to relate to one another. But this year, with all the COVID craziness and all of the excuses they would have to not be great, or to look a little ugly against, a Wake, or be sleepy against Citadel, or whatever, Virginia is a team I've been high on for a while, especially defensively. They're very Notre Dame-like in that they don't have a lot of superstars, but they're very sound defensively. They handle their business. I can't say enough good about Clemson in that regard, in that with the world falling down around them, look at the Big 12 right now, Clemson has consistently done the thing that they've been doing in a normal year. And to me, that's a sign of excellent coaching, staff and personnel cohesion that a lot of people aren't seeing elsewhere. We're talking about Clemson. Josh, what's your favorite one thing? Give me one thing that you always, like, it comes to your mind when you personally, not you in general, but you personally, when you're talking about Clemson, what do you love the most about what they do well? Give me one unit, one thing. Go with that, and then bounce it back because it's going to come into a question.
This year?
Any year. During this run, what's been the one thing you've loved the most about Clemson?
In their run, I would say the thing that's defined Clemson has been the vertical passing game.
Okay. So that absolutely is not the thing I thought you were going to say. So we can go with that later, but I want you to talk about the defensive line, because what you always bring up when we talk about Clemson is how dominant they are defensively. And I want you to talk about how that might pose a problem, even though we've just heaped praise on King, in that they haven't seen an approach or a team that can do the things that Clemson's done. So talk about how that might be enough to disrupt Derek King, and then we'll talk about your stupid vertical passing game later.
If you guys ever needed any evidence that we actually do these videos on the fly, that would be it. Apparently, I'm not a mind reader. Yeah, so defensive line for Clemson, I've talked about a lot that the 2016 through 2018 season, both those championships, you can pretty much credit it to the same group of defensive line players. They came in, and a lot of those guys played as freshmen. They stayed for several years, and that 2018 team, they were just freaking special, man. I mean, you had Farrell, and you get Lawrence, it, and they were like five deep. Christian Wilkins, any one of those guys would be, your number one guy on most teams. And they were just part of a unit. And you get, like, for a guy like Austin Bryant to be the lesser known name of a group is kind of insane. And Clemson's continued to recruit at that level. So this year, defensively, Clemson has a lot of talent. I don't know that they're their 2018 group, but again, I think I did the math one time. It was like three defensive linemen in the same line that all went in the first round, and I think I figured out that if it's happened, it hasn't happened in the last 20 to 25 years. Um, you can still be really, really good and not be as good as that unit. KJ Henry, the freshman Brissy, that was an incredibly highly, touted recruit, on the top recruit in a lot of rankings. It's I mean, just a stupid good, stupid talented group with really a lot of potential they haven't even quite hit yet as a unit. And I think the thing that's most impressive is, one, they have the ability to defend the run. Guys like Niles Pinckney that have been in the system for a long time as a senior. And two, they've got guys like KJ Henry that are outside pass rushers, and they got guys like Proceed that are inside interior pass rushers, all in the same unit. Most teams don't have any of them. I think that in and of itself could be an interesting thing for Miami, because Clemson and Miami don't always play each other. And this year with Derek King, a lot of what I was talking about is teams are having to really struggle in the back end because of all the things Derek King brings to the table. I think that outside pass rush and the interior pass rush and all this disruption the line gets presents a unique set of challenges for Miami. And that's one of the big concerns I have in this game with it being competitive. If Derek King is getting tackled in the backfield or getting disruption on a continual basis from a four-man front, Miami is not going to be able to functionally run their offense. If KJ Henry is able to set the edge or get pressure and blow up those zone read plays, in particular with the combination of guys that they have at Clemson, if they're able to play four, have somebody like Henry get the edge in a given game, and then also get interior pass rush pressure, what that's going to do is it's going to let them defend, basically defend the pitch man and the dive at the same time, or the zone read, the keep at the same time. And you end up with something like, Justin Foster kills Derek King, and then, Tyler Davis comes up the middle and smashes the running back that gets given the ball, or vice versa. And without that functioning at a high level, I don't think any of the other counters like they killed Florida State are going to work. I don't know that King's accurate enough to sit in a pocket and throw it. So I think a lot of things offensively could kind of shut down for Miami in that scenario.
Okay, so about your vertical passing game, we might have a problem in this game if we're talking about Clemson. One, Miami is, I think they're good defensively. I don't think they're as good as Virginia, but I think they're good defensively enough that something that you pointed out earlier, Clemson, they had some bad luck with Ross. They've lost a lot of talent on the outside, wide receiver, over the years. Still have talent there, but they seem to be relying heavy on Etienne and the ability to either run him for 6 yards a carry, or, hey, it's 3rd and 16, we can just dump it off on a check down and he's going to get 17 yards. Let's talk about this a little bit, because if there's one thing that I think might be a problem for Clemson and Miami either be competitive or win this game, it's the fact that that vertical passing game isn't there. Or what happens when they take away Etienne? Talk about that, Josh. If Miami is able to neutralize Etienne, do you have real concerns for this Clemson offense?
I do. And we've talked about this a lot. I mean, Trevor Lawrence has come on in the big games for the most part. but he's come on more lately with his legs. Even last season, on a typical down-to-down basis, and I don't know what it is, and you can tell me, all kinds of reasons or excuses or whatever you want to say. He is not consistently productive in the like 5 to 15 yard range. He hits a lot of bombs, and it's because he can make any throw on the field. He's a really tall dude with incredible arm strength, and when he had especially guys like Higgins, he's driving the ball and throwing over a DB's head, but he's throwing line drives 40 yards downfield, and the DBs just couldn't cope with a 6'4" receiver receiving a line drive from a 6'6" quarterback, where the ball is half a foot over their head and never drops, and it's coming at the velocity it is. A lot of that stuff's gone. Last year it wasn't overly effective. Lawrence really killed teams with his legs. That's what let him beat Ohio State. Didn't hit a ton of bombs even in the Ohio State game, and again wasn't really effective against LSU. I don't really know where the counter is. So, again, you hit enough of those to sort of keep teams honest, and you run with your legs. You don't need to be in a game where you're hitting 20 to 30 points on the ground on a continual basis. I mean, a lot of those games, Ohio State and LSU, came from the defense. So if you come into this game now, all right, so that whole like long spiel, Higgins is gone from the roster. Ross got hurt, and it's a real tragedy what's going on with him, and I hope he gets healthy and is able to come back. But you got to deal with the reality you have now. Against Virginia, Travis Etienne was your leading rusher and your leading receiver. He had about a third of the team's receiving yards, 114 yards receiving, 73 yards rushing. He was the only receiver in the game to have an over 30 yards in a reception. Amari Rodgers is a good receiver. He is a slot receiver. He is not really a downfield possession jump ball guy. You can do a lot of stuff with him, but it's very different than what you could do with Higgins and Ross. So those big vertical scoring shots are kind of out of the offense. And what they've been leaning on, which they've done in recent years, is, for example, Etienne and Lawrence combining for over 100 yards rushing against Virginia. That moves the sticks. Teams don't really usually have an answer for Etienne, and he had a couple crazy rushes and receptions. If you can take Etienne out of this game, if Etienne's not a factor, either because Miami schemes him or, God forbid he sprains an ankle or something, I'm not sure what plan B is. And you talk about Virginia and Miami's defense. I don't know that I agree with you. I do think Virginia is really good all the way through the defense, and they've got a good secondary. But Virginia's front seven, I don't think it's quite as good as Miami's. They're more disruptive, and especially with Phillips as a transfer, they've got a pass rushing ability that's kind of unique in that conference outside Clemson. If they can do some things with those guys to contain Etienne, and Etienne statistically has been contained in some of the major games, especially the playoff games, they don't have the vertical shot that they've transitioned to when Etienne isn't the guy, or when teams are trying to hedge on Etienne and they take advantage of those one-on-ones. And so given that Lawrence has not been really consistently effective as an intermediate passer, I think it's possible to hold Clemson to 30 points this year. But that's kind of where you're at, right? Is you might be able to hold Clemson to 20 to 30 points, but you still got to deal with their defense. So that was a long explanation to say, yeah, you might have the ability to beat Clemson if you score 30 points in a game. I think the ultimate question is anybody going to score more than 20 points on Clemson's defense absent a high-end passing attack?
Yeah, and I'm going to go ahead and give my prediction. For me, I actually think that Miami is interesting because I don't know that they win this game, but I think this game can tell us a lot about Clemson in terms of how they're going to fare against Ohio State or Alabama in the playoffs. But it also tells us about the trajectory of Miami. And if they are on the cusp of being that second team in the ACC that everybody desperately wants to exist, which I think they are on the cusp, they got to find something at quarterback after King. Like, it can't be just a flash in the pan, but I think they're there. I don't think they are a team that can go 4 quarters with Clemson. And I think it's going to be a situation where early on, Miami is in this game. And I think it's going to make Clemson sweat a little bit. But the experience of big games and the ability to at some point find a vertical shot is going to break the back of Miami. but I don't think it's a runaway. Give me 27-17 in a very respectable, says more good about Miami than bad about Clemson final score. Tell me what you got.
I'm a little less bullish, and it's purely because of matchup. And we spun it a lot. I think Miami is a good team this year. I think Miami is a legitimately good team. I think Miami would give people fits. I think Miami would be fairly competitive, even somewhere like the vaunted SEC this year. They are a good team. This is not the right matchup for Miami. Clemson has one of the better defensive fronts, if not the best defensive front in the country. They've got guys with that are very disruptive and great run stoppers and a lot of depth. And I was running through names from Clemson, and you name a guy like Bressie, he doesn't even start. And that's the problem with your Miami. As I was talking about, their offense is all about King's ability to create, and it's all about really King's ability to run the football and to strain a defense such that you have easier throwing opportunities. It's a good system. It is set up for success for Miami to have a good year. It is not good to play that system against high-end disruptive defensive linemen. That's always been known. Those guys blow up these schemes. No one has been able to run the ball on Clemson. Virginia really didn't run the ball. The leading rusher was the quarterback. I think that they were more than happy to let Armstrong be in the leading rusher. I don't think they're going to let King run the ball for 80 yards in this game. I have this game 34-13. Like you, I think it's going to be close for a while. I don't think it's going to be over in the first half. I think it's going to be more like third and fourth quarter. I think this game ends up something like 34-13 just because when push comes to shove late, Miami is going to have to start really throwing the ball. And when Clemson pins their ear back, and comes after him, I think you're going to get negative plays and turnovers, and Clemson's going to be able to bury it. I do think Miami's going to make Clemson work offensively. And to me, the biggest takeaway from this game is going to really be examining if Clemson, when they're in a competitive game, if they're going to be able to really throw the ball to move down the field and score, or if they're going to have to rely on Etienne in particular and Lawrence's legs to keep running the ball, grinding it out, and win it. Because that's not going to be sustainable in playing elite defenses and playing teams that can score a lot of points. But if they're able to throw the ball, that's the thing that's going to sustain them in a playoff scenario. If you're Miami, I just want to see you hold point for 2 or 3 quarters. You don't need to win this game, in my mind, to be even a top 10 team. And it can be a blowout. As long as the blowout's done in a certain fashion, I'm still going to buy that Miami is a greatly improving team.
All right, well, that's it for our Clemson and Miami preview. Hopefully we did Clemson, not Clemson, justice in this video. I have to call that out every time because we have been bad about that in the past, and we will be in the future, I'm sure. Remember, give us your score in the comments, and thanks so much, y'all. Have a great week, and God bless.